There is a fascinating book called The Inspirational Story of Ethan A. Poetic, Chronicles of Adversities, Education, Sports, Relationships, and Resiliency. I had the honor of sitting down with Ethan to hear his story of learning to live again after a fatal car accident and the power that comes along with changing our name. This is some of what he had to say.
And here I am on a feeding tube, skinny down to the bone. I can't eat or drink, and the consequences is pneumonia. Do you want to get better or get worse? And then I'm looking around like I'm missing out on light birthday parties, traveling. I'm just sitting in my living room, sitting in a room, and life is passing by while I recover. My original last name used to be Vaughn, but I changed it because Vaughn belongs to the German slave masters who were my ancestors in Cambridge, Maryland, on my mom's side of the family. And I realized that my legacy was becoming greater. It's just best to change my last name and have something I can own outright. That when I do get recognized, I can say this is my last name. I can say this belongs to me. It belongs to my purpose, my gifts, my talents. And it got legally approved by Livingston County Courthouse summer of 2021.
Let's talk about overcoming some of life's greatest adversities. Hello, all of my beautiful, beautiful people out there. Welcome back to yet another installment of the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. My name is Devanin Serafino. I am your host. I have with me the talented, the strong-willed, the resilient Ethan Poetic. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Would honor to be on your show.
Yeah, thank you so much, y'all. Ethan has been so damn patient with me over the last year. We've been trying to set this up, but y'all who've been following me now, I've been going through some changes, y'all. And Ethan has been patient. I kept having to reschedule and everything. He wasn't tripping, just going with the flow and everything like that. And so I commend you for your patience and being flexible. And I really, really appreciate that. And are your pronouns he, him, or is there something else that I just assumed that I shouldn't have?
Just he.
Okay. Wonderful. So I'm gonna read a little bit of your background, and then I'll let you kind of like say what you want to say about, what motivates you. Y'all, he's an author, he's a speaker, mental health advocate, a mentor, a life coach. He survived a very, very tragic accident at least 12 years ago. And he's going to talk about how he alchemized and converted the things that he's been through, the accident, his upbringing, into helping others. So Ethan was raised in a single parent household with four siblings, drawn from his personal experiences, including an estranged relationship with his biological father, poverty, learning support classes, and government assistance programs. Ethan now works to help others. Ethan graduated from Harrisburg area community college with an associate's degree and from Millersville University with a bachelor's degree. He received the two Pennsylvania Commonwealth citations from Senator Scott Martin and House of Representative Mike Sturla, Lancaster City Council, and Mayor Deneen Soros also adopted a proclamation declaration resolution for recognizing Ethan's miraculous recovery as a walking, living miracle. What was that recovery from?
Man, it's like a rude awakening. Basically, it's like a 99% chance of death versus what percent chance of life from a near fatal car accident where the guy who was driving the car ran into an 18-wheeler. Can you imagine the police getting phone calls, using tape, directing traffic 3 miles backed up each way? Can you imagine the ambulance coming in the scene with the stretcher? Then there's also the neck brace, checking people's pulses. Then the fire department got to cut the car in half. Not half a sandwich, cut a car in half with the jaws of life. Can you imagine just me being helpless by people I don't even know that are helping me because they took an oath, whether it be medical, fire, police? Can you imagine all the people that surround the area just watching everything take place while their life is put on hold because of a near fatal car accident? And the recovery was a long journey of an emergency surgery, rehab, and being on a feeding tube for several months.
How did this accident happen? Was somebody asleep at the wheel? Was the 18-wheeler driver drunk? Did your car go underneath it? Like, what went wrong?
Based on what I researched, based on the television interview that I saw, based on the footage, and also the interview footage, is just the guy ran into an 18-wheeler head on, just pow. And it was just something I didn't see coming because before that accident happened, I remember passing a Hess gas station, the Rockville outlets, and next thing you know, I wake up in the ICU and I got IVs in my both my veins of my arms. I lost all this weight. Nobody's telling me what happened. And at first, I thought I was the only person involved. Turns out other people got hurt along the way. Fortunately, I lost a cousin who was a toddler. Then the guy who drove the car, he died on impact. And a couple other family members had some injuries. And they didn't face that medical collision like me.
Wait, so you're saying that somebody was driving. Were you driving or were y'all in the car with someone else? Or was this somebody completely unrelated that caused the whole chain reaction?
He was the guy driving the car,
Who was he?
and that was my aunt's fiance at the time.
Okay, so is he
And they were supposed to get married later that year. And when they hit that 18, well, it just life changed for a lot of people.
who? Well, I'm sorry that you went through that and that it happened, in the way that it did. How can I say this? Haven't been through enough, I guess we could say cataclysmic changes in my life. Like it used to like shock me, but then it got to a point where I understand how quickly things can change and how ephemeral, how temporary whatever physical reality is, as I understand it, is it can change in a moment. Everything is subject to change. So do you feel like that due to this experience and other experiences, you have like now if something happens and it shifts everything, do you adjust quicker? Has it given you more like resilience in that way, or do you still struggle with sudden changes when they happen?
It depends on what's going on. Like, for example, if there's like a conflict going on. Like, for example, when I used to work inside the schools, certain kids, I already know what to say. I already know what to do, certain protocols to do, and work with the other adults and we'll resolve it. Now, when it comes to an argument, some people just, want to be right about something or fail to listen to a point which they experience a breakthrough. There's certain situations where I did become more resilient because, what don't kill you make you stronger. You can look at the 50 Cent, also known as Curtis Jackson situation, where he had several bullets inside of him and he didn't die. His struggle was long and built recovery. And eventually he became a multimillionaire. You can look at the homeless to Harvard story where this person was homeless, but she was still smart enough to get accepted into Harvard, which is one of the top Ivy League schools in America, which has a low acceptance rates. Then you can also look at the story of Michael Orr, the homeless. No, not that one. It's called The Blind Side, where he grew up in poverty most of his life until his family took him in, helped him get into this private school, and showed him a new way of life. And eventually he went to Ole Miss, graduated from college, got drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, and he also became a multimillionaire. You know part of the reason why I mentioned the story because some of those things can relate to me in a way of they had their experiences of going through this stuff, going through the fire, going through this turbulent time period. But I realized when you outlast it, you overcome it. And, not everyone's willing to overcome it. Some people want to be a victim for attention. Some people want to start a pity party.
Yeah.
Some people turn to drugs and alcoholism. And the truth is, it's not for us to carry. It's meant for us to unpack and unrelease.
Okay. So then let me follow you with that. You're correct. Some people do fall into like playing the victim and everything like that, which provides like a false sense of security, and it's all rooted in fear and it's not healing and it never goes anywhere. What was your road to recovery besides the physical therapy? Imagining that you would have had, like, on a mentally speaking and emotionally speaking, how did you avoid becoming a victim? Was it therapy? Was it alternative medicines? Or like, how did you do that?
It's a combination of being on over 20 prayer lists before I even woke up. People coming in to visit me in the hospital, rehab, my home. I didn't go to therapy until later on in life. And then there's also just not giving up. Because I'm experiencing something that I never experienced before. I experienced poverty. I experienced abandonment. Well, this is a whole nother level of experience where you gotta go through it to get through it. And sometimes there's this quote I remember, it gets worse before it gets better. And here I
Mhm.
am on a feeding tube, skinny down to the bone. I can't eat or drink, and the consequences is pneumonia. Do you want to get better or get worse? And then I'm looking around like I'm missing out on life, birthday parties, traveling. I'm just sitting in my living room, sitting in the room, and life is passing by while I recover. And it helped to have some support from people. But eventually, I did become able to eat it again. I did get the feeding tube removed from me. But again, things got worse before it got better. And I talk about that in my autobiography.
The name of his book I sent you is the inspirational story of Ethan A. Poetic, Chronicles of Adversities, Education, Sports, Relationships, and Resiliency. That is the name of his book. It's on Amazon. That link will go in the show notes. I wanted to ask you, your last name, Poetic, is that like your original last name? Did you change your last name to that? Talk to me about that.
My original last name used to be Vaughn, but I changed it because Vaughn belongs to the German slave masters who were my ancestors in Cambridge, Maryland, on my mom's side of the family. And I realized that my legacy was becoming greater. It's just best to change my last name and have something I can own outright. That when I do get recognized, I can say this is my last name. I can say this belongs to me. It belongs to my purpose, my gifts, my talents. And it got legally approved by the Livingston County Courthouse summer of 2021,
How old were you when this accident happened?
early 20s.
Okay. And y'all, I think you told me you were 35 or 36 before we came on.
I'm 36 now.
36. So so let me echo a couple of things here. I'm loving what you're giving us right now. So I also legally changed my last name last year to Serafino because of all the catastrophic things that I went through, and I realized that I was in this like cycle of this narcissistic cycle and everything, which started with my biological dad, and then a whole lot of other changes that I had to make, and that whole other person that I used to be was over. Names carry power. I don't blame you for changing your name. I didn't want to be affiliated with the energy that my previous last name held. I wanted a whole new path. And so then I took on the name Serafino, and there's like a whole story to that. So it's me and my 2 cats that have that last name. I'm the first of my kind, and I filed it in court and everything like that. And so I'm with you on that. Period. Period. You don't like it, change it. And there's so much power and not feeling like trapped in a name you were born in, or a legacy that's trying to be assigned to you, or or any kind of like form of oppression. So when people get married and things like that, y'all consider if you really want to take on the last name of that person, research that family line, see what's going on. Because you don't necessarily have to do it, but if you accept that last name, you're accepting the energy that comes along with it. So be careful. I think it's beautiful if two people say get married, or three people, however many they want it to be, and just come up with their own whole other name, and just decide on their a whole new path for themselves. They don't have to take on either name. Just do your own thing and be free and be done with it. And so, well, but what's your opinion on I mean, on that which I just said, like in terms of like the power of last names?
Right. A last name is a legacy, whether for the greater good or for the worse. And sometimes we come around saying this is our last name when sometimes we gotta understand these Americanized last names are most of them are European based. Now, when it comes to the Native American Indians, they have their original last names. Those their last names means a certain thing that goes in the family prior to the oppression they went through. And you can also look at those who have Spanish last names, Italian last names. It goes back to something. Some of it goes back to slavery. Some of it goes back to adoption. Some of it goes back to just being born with it. It's more than just a name. It's just what is it that you want to be remembered by, whether it's in your obituary or your headstone.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Alright, amen to that, brother. I wanted to touch on the pneumonia that you mentioned, and then I wanna ask you about the experience of being on feeding tubes. I just wanted to talk about that. When I was here now, were you at risk of getting pneumonia, or did you get pneumonia?
I was at risk of getting pneumonia if I decided to eat or drink anything.
Okay. So, what is this? Today is Monday, February the 12th in the year 2024. I moved up here to New York back in October. I say moved, it was like a rush thing kinda done, and I was that it was it my New York initiation has been like quite intense. I got pneumonia in October, and I had to be hospitalized for it. I don't know, my immune system, like, on paper was fine. I have a history of HIV and hepatitis B, but all my viral loads were non-detectable and low, and everything in my body. I think God wanted to slow me down because I was moving very, very fast, making all these changes. And then I think my body just could just it just needed to like just stop for a moment. But it like freaked me out that my body could not heal like that. I was not in the hospital, but for like 3 days, but still I had to be connected to IVs to help my body to fight the infection because it couldn't do it on its own. And so like my friends up here is like, okay, like I'm the new guy in town, the queer kid with HIV, and now I'm in the hospital with pneumonia. They're like, what the fuck is going on? And so when you were in there on the feeding tubes, can you speak to that from like a mental and emotional aspect? Because you were in the car, you're able to feed yourself, you know, and now you're in a hospital bed, you cannot get up to move about as you wish and please. Did it make you feel helpless? Or did you find it easy to depend on other people? Like, where were you at on an emotional spectrum?
It like I'm looking around like I had all this ability to just get up and go. Now it's just more during that time period of I need help just to get up out of the bed. And then there's also, being on that feeding tube, it was just keeping me alive. Where I had this tube sets connected to my stomach, and the machine goes zoom, 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 stops every 30 seconds to a minute, zoom, 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 zoom. That's and then some people didn't realize I was on a feeding tube until I started talking about it publicly. You know, with some of these podcasts, mentioning my book. Some people just thought, oh, I was in a car accident and it got a long road recovery. You know, it got to the point where my mouth was so watery. I had to have a pill. I had to have a towel underneath my mouth. That's how it was. My mouth was just so watery because I was so used to consuming foods and beverages. I couldn't even do that for several months. I couldn't even go to the grocery stores. It's just I see all that food and I'm like, is someone teasing me here or what? It's it, and then I'm looking around like I don't need to be in here. I need to go back in that car. It's just too much for me. And then there's also the situation of just it's a humbling experience, but it's more humbling than someone being in a prison in a hole for several months. When you're in a hole, you can't still move around. Someone's gonna give you some food, might not be good quality unless you got money for commissary. In my situation, don't even put money on my commissary. I can't even consume it if I wanted to, or else there's consequences. And that takes mental fortitude and understanding that, every day I decide one day at a time, 1 hour at a time. Do I want to grab that apple or banana, or do I want to look away and put that food away, or to put my mind on something else?
What
And like if I want to take that bite and try to swallow it, it's gonna be the start of pneumonia, and then it's time for you to call the ambulance. And it just wasn't worth putting other people more worried about me what they are. And when I finally got that feeding tube, it started with soft foods, medium soft, and hard foods, and then people started taking me out to eat. I saw beautiful waitresses, but I never saw the bill.
well, naturally. Can you explain to me though how if you would have eaten something, it would have given you pneumonia? I thought it was that if you didn't eat at first, you would have gotten pneumonia. So how does that go?
Well, it's just my larynx was paralyzed right here
Um,
because they put that breathing tube down my throat, and it was down there for so long. Mind you, they were trying to save my life. And I remember like it was yesterday. I get sent to this room, and then I notice I'm in the surgery room. It's cold. They said count backwards from 99 to 100, and boom, sleep. I wake up. I'm in the room. I look around. I ask, "Can I get water?" So the woman takes this popsicle stick that has a sponge on it, swirls it in the water, a cup, and told me to open my mouth. One drop. That's it. Where's the rest of it? No more. I felt like I was being teased, and it was just I couldn't believe it.
phew, talk about perspective. As they say in John Wick, one of my favorite movie series of all time, perspective is everything. You know, and I've been locked up, I've been in jail, so I understand what it's like to suddenly and I've been homeless, before, so I understand what it's like to suddenly not have the options that you used to have before. When you're around people, or if you're ever out about in public and perhaps you hear somebody complaining or being ungrateful because they clearly have a lack of perspective, because really we have nothing to complain about, it's all about perspective. Does it rub you the wrong way, or do you have some sort of like internal reaction? I know we don't compare ourselves to other people, but we've been through what we've been through. And so we understand that we have a lot to be thankful for, and we know how bad things can get. So whenever you hear somebody complaining and just like what goes through your head, I wonder.
I mean, everyone has a opportunity to vent how they feel, but it's usually something much bigger going on than beyond the surface. It's going on what's going on inside internally. I don't get into people's business all like that. It's just I don't want too many people in my business that I got things going on. So I like to, keep a boundary on certain things. I just know, when it comes to health, health is wealth. And, everyone's going through something. But I realize the things that we go through in life in general have already been overcame before. Because Earth is at least 2,000 years old. And if we go inside the library, we'll see some of the things that we're experiencing now. Someone already experienced a breakthrough, or someone did not experience a breakthrough. So that's the difference between mental wellness versus mental illness. And what we reveal is what we heal. And what we hold on to sometimes for too long starts to cripple us.
Mhm.
And I'm not trying to be God, the judge, and the jury. That's just not my place. When I was working with the kids, certain kids complain about certain things. I listen to what they say, and I might say a few words, and then they get it. For example, somebody might be struggling to read a book, and then there was a time where a teacher said, Ethan wrote a book. The kid asked how many. He said over 200. The kid was like, 200? And the teacher showed him the book. That was a different perspective and an inspiration. And then there's times where a girl might be crying about missing her parents and give that person reassurance that their parents are going to come pick them up or at the school or from the after school program. Or it could be with a coworker who might be, pregnant and going through the mood swings. Every perspective is different. There's some things I can relate to, and there's some things I cannot relate to. The only thing I can do is listen.
Mhm. Sometimes that's all people seem to need. So I just want to be clear before we switch gears into like your poetry workshops and speaking more specifically about the services that you offer and talk about your fabulous website. You were in the hospital for 7 months.
I was in the hospital for at least a month, then rehab for a month, but I was in the feeding tube for 7 to 8 months.
Okay. Okay. That's what I wanted to get clear on. So hospital rehab 1 to 2 months, and feeding tubes for 7 to 8 months. And then you begin to gradually work your way back into like regular meals. This story reminds me about something that's super close to me. And I hope and pray to Jesus that one day I have an opportunity to help teenagers, like in young adults who are hospital ridden. I volunteered temporarily with this teenager when I was in the Air Force in Redlands, California, at the Loma Linda Hospital, and he was this teenage kid who who had a cancer that had compromised his immune system to the point that he had to stay in his room, in the hospital. He was not on a feeding tube or anything like that, but he could not go any further than that door, or he would just, I guess, crumble to pieces or whatever the case may be. And so I went in and like played video games and stuff with him. But like you were saying earlier, you look at a kid like that, this young, healthy Latino male, could be at prom, could be out dating, could be playing soccer, football, basketball, golf, rugby, lacrosse, whatever. But instead, his house is this hospital room. And so my heart really goes out to people who, unlike, say, like me, when I went to jail for doing shit, that I had no business doing. You're in an accident, that's no fault of your own. This kid has cancer, that's no fault of his own, and yet there are such severe restrictions. So, I'm hearing you when you say that. It reminded me of my experience with that kid, and I hope one day that I'm able to do something, for people who are in hospitals like you were, that just, that have those restrictions on them. So, I gave an overview of the things that you do, like being an author and a speaker and a mental health advocate. What would you like to say, yourself about, the services you provide before I start to pick at it?
Okay. Well, I'm a keynote speaker. I speak at colleges, public schools, private schools, charters, academies, Then it's also corporate world, conferences, panel discussions, mentoring, work, poetry workshops. And of course, I sell my book, hard, soft, ebook, and it's also the new release audio version. Everything's available on all major platforms. But just with the date for the audio book for certain platforms is still on pre-sale order. It's spoken by me. I gave it my all. I own everything outright. I have the copyright letters. I'd like to thank all the people behind the scenes, and the best is yet to come.
I know that's right. I It is such a strong feeling of accomplishment, man, when you write that first book. I did my own audiobook too. It's like you feel like Superman or some damn superhero standing on top of a building in New York City or something like that, just overlooking the whole world. That's how I felt, to get that done. And so you do like poetry workshops. I've talked to like a lot of different like coaches and people who do speaking and things like that. Your variety is intriguing to me because you're doing classrooms, college campuses, different conferences, even chambers of commerce. It's
Well, I haven't got into the Chamber of Commerce yet. I know the CEOs in the area where I live at, like between central Pennsylvania and down in southeastern Pennsylvania and also Philadelphia. I know the CEOs and those who are involved. I haven't become a member. I just know a lot of members that are in the Chamber of Commerce. I know plenty of people have been recognized by them. And it's great to, shaking hands with people that are involved with that.
Can you tell me, give me an example of like a client that you work with or somebody you mentored, like their before and after?
I usually get contacted through my website and they'll send me an email and they just get like a brief summary of what they're looking for. And I just look over everything to see if it's aligned and set up a 15-minute consultation through my e-calendar and just listen. And then eventually, set up a timeline of how long do you want to do this for? Can you afford this? And do you have Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, or Apple Pay as a security deposit reserve for that time period? Because when it comes to that life coach, it's more like sports coaching. I can give you the information, I can give you the blueprint, but you have to do the work. And that's the game changer right there, is that we all got work to do. Even I got still got more work to do. Like for example, when I was in college, my work that I had to work on was getting better at math. And I got help from the tutors, the private tutor, and the college professor. And I just made sure it's, going both ways, not just about, one-sided. Then when it comes to a client, they might want to know how did you they want to know from my experience, how did I overcome having an estranged relationship with my father? And I told them it's a journey. Some of us got a hole in our heart, like, why is this person not here? Why this person didn't celebrate my birthday? But when I got older, started having conversations with people, they start giving me pieces to the puzzle and things start making sense. I start reading books, start hearing words of affirmation, and I realize in order for certain parents to have a good relationship with their children, it's best that both parents are willing to both parent together, whether they're living together, cohabitating together, or living in different households. In my situation, it's a matter of just understanding the honest truth or the uncomfortable truth. What I experienced is the same thing my dad experienced with his own dad. So that's the cycle. Eventually, when all that stuff's in my lap, I get to decide. with the help of other people growing up, will I want to repeat this cycle or break the cycle? And that does include, boundaries. Like, for example, I spoke to him maybe last year for the first time in several years. We were at this courthouse. This judge had an interest in buying my book. I was getting ready to write a judge the note. If I would have left sooner, like by 2 or 3 minutes, we would have missed each other. But I saw him, he saw me. We had a conversation, and he did not like how things were talked about him in my book. Was the honest truth. Because when you don't make the right decisions in life or clean up your past, things come back to haunt you and it becomes a nightmare. And even in your nightmare, you can still overcome things. It's not like it's Freddy Krueger versus somebody else. Freddy, it's just more being humble to say, I'm speaking from somebody else's perspective. They had that conversation with their own biological dad where they said, "Hey, I'm sorry for what I did. I like to make amends, but this is the people that are going to hold me accountable moving forward." Because some people think, and I'm just saying this from other people's perspective, sorry can take away abandonment. That doesn't work like that. It takes work, conversations, phone calls. You can look at Ray Lewis's situation. His dad wasn't there for him, but eventually they had a talk and they eventually experienced a breakthrough in their relationship to where they're like friends. And I say all that as just an example of some of the tools and resources I can tell my clients on how to overcome these daddy issues, mother issues, because these issues has a opposition to them. It's kind of like happiness versus depression. They both work together as balance. You're not too high, you're not too low, you're in between. But eventually we have to decide, what do we want to do with our mental health?
Hmm. What we're going to do is shield it and protect it from anything and anyone that might threaten it. I'm very, very proud of you for standing up for yourself like that, and yet for being flexible enough to give your dad that space to act right if he wanted to. I hear you when you said you said what you said, in your book, and it was what it was because it's the truth. I spilled some tea, on my own dad, in my book as well. Oh well, if he didn't want it written, he shouldn't have been slinging his dick all over town and cheating and everything like that, and being abusive and things like that. I'm going to give him one more chance, and this year at some point in a couple of months to hopefully to have a conversation, my own dad, and own up to the things he did. The last time I tried to mention, he was still very narcissistic and defensive. We're gonna go one more again, just one more. If he don't act right, then I'm taking back my house keys and I'll be banished from my life and from my property. Because he's my dad, I'm gonna give him one more chance. All the other narcissists got immediately cut off and then exercise out of my life. So good on you for trying. We can but try, but we can't make people tell the truth or own up to their own stuff, but we can try though. So so your clients are coming to you asking for help with the same sort of issues that you went through. That's what you're guiding and coaching people through the sports, yeah, but then personally in their interpersonal relationships, like what are some of the problems people reach out to you for?
I mean, it varies. I don't want to go too deep. I just want to say things are just different. Every client has something different they want to speak on. But I just move forward. When it comes to the sports, hey, I can relate to the kids since I'm a former student athlete with football, basketball, track and field, and wrestling. Things have evolved to where my relationships have evolved with my coaches that train me and coach me. And we're filling in the voids for me during certain time periods when I could have been doing something else.
Mhm.
And they use my story and inspiration and everything I achieved more as a blueprint to tell the student athletes, like, hey, this is the type of relationship I want with you in the future because it's bigger than the X's and O's, scoring 1,000 points, scoring 1,000 yards, or holding up some trophy or medal. Well, that's become the best versions of ourselves by becoming productive member of society.
Right, absolutely. Amen and concur. So last thing, can you talk to me about those your poetry workshops? Are those online? Do you do those in person? How often do they happen?
I haven't done it in a while. I do that in person. Like, for example, I did one when the first day one was at Lakeshore Country Day. My friend was in middle school at the time. The teacher wanted to bring in poetry and spoken word artists. I passed the interview, and when it was time for me to speak, I was fully engaged with the students. It was allowing them to speak their own truth, even though they came from wealth. Because even those who got money face problems. Like Biggie Smalls said, the more money you get, the more problems you get. But it also means the more solutions you need to get. And people. The difference is some people can pay their bills on time, and some people struggle to pay their bills. As far as the poetry workshop, again, it's more about bringing up the creative side with people, allowing them to have a voice, speak their own narratives. That way they can take full control. Because everyone speaks differently, communicates differently, whether this be in braille, sign language, by doing, by listening, or by speaking. It's just a matter of just adapting to a person to how they are. You can look at a barber school or barber academy. Those instructors had to accommodate to those people who speak like that in general.
Very good as
Because it
also.
can't be yeah, because it can't be a one size fit all. You gotta be willing to adapt.
Yep, adapt, be flexible, learn how to code switch, and yet maintain your authenticity at the same time. Okay, very, very good. That just about wraps us up, Ethan. I appreciate your transparency today. I'm gonna go ahead and let you say just whatever last word of inspiration you would like to. I'm gonna ask you our dad jokes, and then we'll close out with that. So anything you'd like to say?
Don't invest more than you can afford to lose, whether it's in your relationships, a job that you're unhappy with. You can but moving forward, just I don't post on social media for the clouds, the likes. I only did it because or continue to do it is just to inspire people. It's just a situation where life had its way of pushing me outside my comfort zone. 'Cause I wanted to go up in the sunset. Here I'm at this job, I can work. I got this bus pass. I'm back. I'm on my, was in college, but when people start bringing up the car accident, like for example, I would go to work after the college, class was over. And as parents or guardians or those who play, different roles in children's life, they want to research who's working with their child, whether it's in the classroom, sports, anything. And what will happen sometimes, they'll pull out their cell phone like, "This is you from the car accident?" I said, "Yes." And they were like, "Wow, you're here working?" I didn't understand at the time. They felt inspired. What they didn't know about me at the time was I felt vulnerable, just them bringing it up.
Mm,
And eventually, my boss told me I'm an inspiration. I got to learn to deal with it. And that's part of the reason why, I help out certain people with inspiring. That's the basis of my business of allowing people to turn their adversities into their advantage because you can look at anybody's life in general, you get to see the fruits of their labor. But moving forward, I'm a keynote speaker. I'm available to speak at your venues as long as you fill out the intake form. And the key thing I want to emphasize is that I value my services and my products. I put my own resources into this. I put my all into this. I'm a reputable brand and business. And I'll continue to go into my third year into business legally. But moving forward, I just want to let you know that when you have me speak at your engagement, that arena or venue is gonna come out better than how they came in when I speak. I'm not gonna guarantee you, I'm gonna show you. And, once you fill out the intake form for your event, I look over everything. I just wanna let you know ahead of time, I do require a security deposit. just to reserve that day. And I do require a legally binding contract. This is business, and I just don't want anyone getting caught up in hearsay. But moving forward, my social media on LinkedIn, Facebook, and my YouTube channel is Ethan Poetic. Then on TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, I am Ethan Poetic 23. Twitter, I am Ethan V 23. Then my website to book me for your speaking engagements or buy the books from me directly. I'll send it to your mailing address or PO box. You just got to pay me electronically. My website is called ethanspeaks.com, and best is yet to come.
Yeah, and his website, ethanspeaks.com, he's beautiful, got the kids in the kids' classroom and everything. I thought that was so, like, heartwarming. It's super colorful and fun at ethanspeaks.com. All of his contact information will go in the showy notes as it always does. So thank you for that outro and for that confidence, y'all. When Ethan speaks at your event, he's gonna speak and he's gonna tell it. Thank you very, very much for that confidence. I really, really connected with that. I appreciate a confident man. So dad joke number one. How do ghosts stay in shape?
How do ghosts stay in shape? I don't know. Eat a marshmallow?
I could see that for Casper or that huge ghost from Ghostbusters. No, they exercise.
Oh, I didn't know.
That's a play on the word exorcism.
I was
These
gonna say maybe they learned from Casper the ghost.
Right. That joke number 2. What do rabbits need after getting caught in the rain?
I don't know.
A hair dryer. HARE.
A hair dryer. I didn't see that coming.
Yep. And then the third one is, and the final one is, what kind of shoes does a lazy person wear?
I don't know. Crocs?
You know what? I'll give you that one because that's pretty much true. The answer that I got here in today's dad jokes came from henryanddavid.com, but they said loafers. But we'll go with Crocs too, because that's pretty much the same damn thing. So yeah, you got
Yeah.
one. And hallelujah, tabernacle and praise. All right, Ethan. Thank you so much for coming on the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast today. I look forward to editing and releasing this show. You have yourself a great evening.
You too, man. I look forward to being back on the show in the future. If you're interested in purchasing my book, you can send me an email or a text. Other than that, man, I look forward to sharing this once everything's all gets edited.
All right. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ethan. Thank you all so much for joining us today and for taking some time to invest into yourself and into the lives of your loved ones. Please visit us at sexdrugsandjesus.com and check out our resource page, our spiritual service offerings, my blog, my books, and other writings that God has partnered with me to create. Find us on any social media platform. Stay strong, my people, and just remember that everything is going to be all right.